Hello. Um, I'm going to have my own news program with my embodied language. While most people uh, are watching TV to see the news, I tell myself with my embodied language what is the news. And if you want to hear it, you hear me talk with myself about what's going on. Let me just remove my seat a little bit. I just want to make sure that I'm comfortable. So yeah, it's very easy to get distracted by what is going on everywhere and what everybody else is saying. But if you want to have embodied language, then it is a matter of talking with yourself and hearing yourself. And if you don't do that, yeah, then you are not going to have embodied language. And you do not have embodied language because you do not do that. And so, yeah, you still have a chance to do it. And then you will notice the enormous difference between, yeah, listening to others or uh, trying to, I don't know, get others to listen to you and listening to yourself. I'm not in any way concerned about whether you listen to me or not. I sit here by myself and I talk with myself, and in a little while, I will read something that I have written because I also want to include that into this video. But I talk with myself, and this is how I want to talk with you. And if you don't want that, yeah, then yeah, then I cannot be with you. And so this is something new in the sense that it's actually not really new. It is actually old news that people come and go. And so, yeah, there's really not a whole lot to be said that I was having conversation with someone who who basically wasn't up to it. And but this time I just let it end in a way that I say, okay, this is good the way it ends like this. Yeah, it ends in the way that I want it to end. And the way I want it to end is like, okay, the chance has been given, the everything was said, and yeah, then it's just like in any other relationship. Uh, People work it out, people get along or not, and you can only get along with me if you, yeah, have faith in me, or if you know that this embodied language that I'm talking about, that is what I'm about. So if you decline your interest in that, if you somehow make it seem as if you can get along with me by not having embodied language, yeah, I'm sorry, I have to let you know that's not going to happen. So that's just where it stands. And I would assume this would be where it stands with anyone who has embodied language. Because I do not imagine that it is any different for anyone else. If you are going to have embodied language, you have to select those few people who are willing, courageous, sincere, but also intelligent enough to continue with embodied language. And yes, I added that last one, intelligent enough, because I would say people who choose to continue with disembodied language over embodied language, once you have sort of noticed the difference, once you have felt how good embodied language is, how important it is, how all encompassing it is, yeah, because it touches on everything. How can you be so stupid to say, I don't want this, I want to go on with my disembodied language? Because, yeah, if you start to talk with me, if that ever happens, because, yeah, hardly anybody ever contacts me to talk with me about embodied language. But if that ever happens, and it has happened, and it will continue to happen, I'm sure, I have no doubt that people will still get in touch with me to have embodied language. There have always been people that I have had embodied language with. Uh, but the way in which that will occur is different because my experience has changed over time in how I deal with it. But in any case, if it ever happens that you get in touch with me and figure out for yourself, of course, in due course, and you have already listened to my videos, of course, you have already on your own verified what it is like to have embodied language on your own. You have already talked out loud with yourself and determined for yourself, like, yes, it is true what he says, it is true what he does, it is true what he pursues. Yeah, I pursue embodied language. His view about how to pursue that is true because he continues with it. Yeah. So all of that is important because if you do not, if you somehow trust your own nonsense more than what I know about this, yeah, sorry, your own nonsense is going to sidetrack you. Your own history of conditioning with disembodied language is going to prevent you from having embodied language. So if you do not allow me to, yeah, to simply say to you, like, stop it, cut it out, you can't go on like this. You have to be able to say, okay, I will stop it. Okay, I will. That is indeed my disembodied language. Yes, you're right. Oh my goodness. I seem to go there all the time. Well, that's exactly the case. And I've already let you know that in my previous videos, and I will continue to let you know that. But my tolerance for your tendency to go on with disembodied language has really dropped to almost nothing. Yeah. And why is that? Well, it is because I know how to continue with my embodied language. I don't need you to continue my embodied language. I don't need you to support me, to promote me, to buy me a present, to adore me. I don't need any of that. Yeah, I'm fine without you. And I hope you get that because I'm fine without your stupid disembodied language. I don't want to have any part of it. And so unless you can accept that that's my attitude towards you, you will not get in touch with me to begin with. But even if you did get in touch with me, it will be a very brief conversation because I make no exceptions for nobody. I know what I know, and um, the day after tomorrow, I will be 66 years old. So, I feel like yeah, I've earned my dues when it comes to this. I really do know what it is to have embodied language. And I actually feel really good and excited about this. And so the news that I'm having is, yeah, to show you my language enlightenment, which is my ongoing embodied language. Now, um, and believe me, you don't have to believe me, but I just want to uh, let you know that I don't need anyone's apology either. I don't need to hear from anyone like, oh, I'm sorry that I was having disembodied language. No, that's not my point. I don't care about your disembodied language. I simply want you to be responsible enough to stop it. If you cannot stop it, I will stop it. I will say something about it, and then you have to let me take the lead that that's how it's going to be stopped. If you do not let me tell you like, okay, this is not good, this is not what I want. If you do not have any faith in that that's okay, yeah. I mean, in relationships, people adjust to each other, right? If you do not see your conversation with me as a relationship in which I have certain boundaries, in which my boundaries are more important than yours, yeah, your boundaries are having to do with your disembodied language. As a matter of fact, you don't have any boundaries because of your whole concept of who you are and what you do is wrong because of your disembodied language. So, yeah, if you want to be with me, then you have to acknowledge that what I say is true. And yes, if you cannot say that, if you are too proud or too whatever it is, you're too much. Uh, you're so supposedly you're so independent, you're so free, you're so knowledgeable, you are so wonderful. I don't believe that. I don't feel that way. I don't see it like that. I don't hear it. Oh, you're not, to me, you're not important in any way. As a matter of fact, I laugh at you, which is why I wrote this piece here, which I'm now going to read to you. What makes me laugh will hurt your feelings. I'm not allowed to laugh because of your humorless self pity. Of course, I will say what at least makes me laugh, because waiting for you is really no use. You are a lost cause, and I don't have any hope that you are ever going to be able to change. That's really how I feel about you. I don't have any hope that you will change. And if there is a conversation between you and me, if you are going to have embodied language with me, it still remains to be seen whether you will continue with it. Yeah, that's that's how it is. So no, based upon my experience with other people who have had a little bit of embodied language with me and who then again left, I say no. You are never going to change. So at this stage, all I can say is that, yeah, I'm glad you're gone because you're not getting my attention anymore. My laughter isn't stopped by your presence or by anyone else's miserable presence. And it even makes me happier. It makes me louder. It makes me feel relieved. And it shows Nobody, you cannot stop me from laughing. Nobody can stop me from laughing. I'm going to continue to enjoy my embodied language. And I was just wondering, what's wrong with you that you only want to take all the fun out of everything? Because that's what you do with your disembodied language. Of course, I am not hurting you, but you hurt yourself with your disembodied language and by believing in things which aren't true. Saying my truth, yeah, if I say my truth, that is so funny, but you want to make it seem as if I am not funny. I believe I'm funny. You only believe what you believe because you haven't done it. You haven't talked with yourself. And what you believe to be true, it was always making you feel tense, miserable, angry, frustrated, jealous, revengeful. It wasn't true. What you believed wasn't true because it wasn't funny. If it was true, you would have laughed at yourself. So I say, if you ever get to it, try again until you say something that is funny. You can do it. Your problems, in my opinion, your problems are not your future. In my opinion, your problems are your past. You believe your problems are your future because of your disembodied language. But I believe your problems are your past because of my embodied language. Stated differently, your problems are created and maintained and made worse by your conditioning history. Yeah. So your problems are created, maintained, and made worse by your conditioning history. But with your embodied language, you would leave behind your history. In other words, with disembodied language, you are always living in the past, regardless how knowledgeable, skillful, kind, or talented you may be. This illustrates why, when you finally begin to speak with yourself, because, yeah, it will hopefully still happen. And even though I say I don't have any hope, I know that people are listening to this, and I know that you are probably wondering, like, what, what's going on? How does this guy do this? This seems to be something really intriguing what he is saying. And yes, you are at some point going to talk out loud with yourself. You're going to wonder, how does that work, this so-called embodied language? When will I have embodied language? Well, if you listen to yourself, you're going to have embodied language. And then, when you finally begin to speak with yourself and listen to yourself, you will have this sensation as if you are suddenly, all of a sudden, you are thrown into the moment. Yes, you all of a sudden feel, experience, know that you are really present. Yeah. And you feel a relief. You feel good. You say something which is meaningful. You hear a different sound. It is true. And each time, because it doesn't go on, it doesn't stay, it disappears again, it lasts only for a little while. But each time you switch again from your usual disembodied language, in which you do not listen to yourself, to embodied language, in which you listen to yourself, it is kind of a shock to which you only begin to adjust when your embodied language begins to continue over longer periods of time. Obviously, obviously, yeah, when you are still at the beginning of coming to know about embodied language, obviously, this early switching back and forth between your disembodied language and your embodied language, yeah, it is uncomfortable because each time you seem to get it, each time you seem to have it, you enjoy it, you plunge into the moment, you have this experience of wow, how beautiful, how wonderful this is, and then it is gone again. So that is quite upsetting that you lose it and you do not know how you lose it. As a matter of fact, you at some point you begin to listen, but you do not even realize how that actually works. That you are all of a sudden listening to yourself. There's a lot of things involved in why you at some point begin to listen to yourself. And there's also a lot involved into why you engage again in disembodied language. And you can only let yourself know as to why that is. So it is your experimentation which determines whether you will have embodied language again, whether you can go on with it or not. And without your experimentation, nothing happens. So it is uncomfortable, especially in these early stages, because in this early stage of just becoming used to embodied language, the difference is gigantic. The difference is astonishing. The difference is like, wow. You can listen to yourself and you can have embodied language, and you know you have never had ongoing embodied language. So yeah, it is quite something to acknowledge all that. And you have also, with your disembodied language, hurt yourself. You have upset yourself. You have been your own worst enemy with your disembodied language. So yeah, it is uncomfortable in the beginning when you lose your embodied language again and go back again to disembodied language. Frustrating, because it implies that you have little or no control over why you are back again to square one. And you actually do not have much control at all over your embodied language either, although you kind of know that it has to do with listening to yourself, but not enough to continue with it. So if you endure that discomfort that comes with switching back and forth between your disembodied language and your embodied language again, and if you can say, okay, I guess I lost my embodied language again, let's see what I can do to talk with myself, to hear myself, and to listen to myself, and to invite embodied language again back into my life. So if you can endure this discomfort of having lost your embodied language again and having to find it again, because looking for it and trying to have it, none of that is working. Trying to have embodied language doesn't work. You try to have it and you're still not having it. You're having it when you stop trying to have it. You have it when you listen to yourself. You're not having it because you were not listening to yourself. You were not paying attention to your sound, to your dreadful sound, to your tense sound, to your anxious sound, to your fearful, hateful, negative sound. You had not really acknowledged to yourself that you sounded problematic, you sounded like a broken record. Okay, only if you acknowledge that will your disembodied language stop. And then you have embodied language, not because you're trying, no, because you have stopped your disembodied language. Your embodied language only happens if you stop your disembodied language. Yeah, the two do not go together. So that discomfort, you have to endure that. You have to, yeah, go through that, because you have to realize that you've lost your embodied language, that your disembodied language has occurred again. And then you have to acknowledge that you have no control over it. You've lost touch with yourself, and you lack control over yourself as long as you engage in disembodied language. You are only in control of yourself while you have embodied language. That is such an important uh, yeah, discovery, that you could not be in control of yourself with disembodied language, but you will be in control of yourself once you have ongoing embodied language. And what you believed to be self-control with your disembodied language wasn't self-control, because you were not happy. You were not moving towards things that were good for you, that were working for you. You were not peaceful. You were not having fun. You were not having any fun. You were stressed out. You were worried. You were frustrated. You were angry. All these negative things continued with your disembodied language, but with your embodied language, it has stopped. And so now you have self-control. Now you can say for yourself what works for you and what doesn't. So when I say to other people who do not want me to continue with my embodied language that I no longer want to be with them, they should say, "Oh, okay, I hear you. Yeah, I I was going on with my disembodied language, and you don't want that, and I respect that. I acknowledge that. So okay, then you stop your disembodied language because I've brought your attention to it. You do what it takes to hold it back. Your tendency may still be there. I don't care. I don't care that your tendency to have embodied language is there. You just do what you need to do to not have it. And not demand, but I insist that you need to do this, because unless you do this, you are not going to have embodied language. That's why. It's not because I want that from you. You need to do that in order to be able to have embodied language. So again, you begin to realize that only with your embodied language you are in control. But when you have lost touch with yourself and you engage in disembodied language, you are in essence not in control anymore. And if you would be honest with me, you would say, okay, I was out of control, but you are in control. Yeah. You would trust me to sort of just set you straight. But most people cannot stand that confrontation. Yeah. They cannot stand that. They are too proud. They are too arrogant. They're too full of themselves. Well, good luck with it. I don't want any part of it. So once you are back again to your embodied language, the switch, yeah, the switch in which you apparently stop your disembodied language and have embodied language. This switch is immediately, it is instantaneously. And so there is an immediate transformation. Everything is different, although it is not permanent. And although you can be overtaken again by your own conditioning, still, the moment you listen to yourself, your disembodied language stops, and you are again in heaven, so to speak. Yeah, you're not in heaven. You are listening to yourself, and you feel the goodness of your embodied language. And so what this says, yeah, in terms of your future with embodied language, your future probability, yeah, to have embodied language, yeah, the likelihood that you will have embodied language is based on your past experience with it. And so your previous experience of embodied language is the only reason why your embodied language would be possible again in the future. And so the more embodied language you have had, the more likely it will be that you are going to have it in the future. However, in the beginning, as I was just saying, it is kind of rough because you keep losing your embodied language again and again. So it is hard to believe because you still have only moments of embodied language, brief instances of embodied language. It's hard to believe that it will continue. And most people, actually everybody that I have met so far, they fail to continue with their embodied language because it is a matter of faith. They believe that it is a matter of faith in themselves. They believe that it is a matter of trust in me or in themselves. But I say here on this video that it has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with your faith in me or your faith in yourself, trust in yourself. No, it has nothing to do with it. Those in the help, yeah, because it always deals with help of some external agent, yeah, or an internal agent, because this false belief in either an imaginary higher power or false belief in a non-existing inner behavior causing agent, yeah, because you also believe that you have to believe in yourself, in who you are, to make the decision to have. No, it's false. That false belief in an imaginary higher power, yeah, some deity, some god figure, some, I don't know, the cosmos who decides or something like that. False belief in the help that, oh, that will help me. If it was meant to happen, then it will happen. All this nonsense. False belief also in the inner self that, oh yeah, no, I have faith in myself. I know who I am. It's all false. It's all false. All these false beliefs, they prevent the necessary experimentation in which you talk with yourself and hear that when you refer to any such belief, you hear that you are having disembodied language. And only when you hear that you are having disembodied language, your disembodied language will stop. Only when you hear that you are again dreadful, that you are again searching, that something is again missing, and that you are trying to figure it out, you are going to stop your disembodied language. Only when you realize, like, oh, wow. So disembodied language, there's always something wrong. There's always something missing. There's always, in embodied language, nothing is missing. In embodied language, you are good. You are not searching. You are not trying to figure something out. Everything is complete. It's so beautiful. So as long as you believe in your belief in a higher power or in your inner self, and of course in this whole stupidity of inner language, because that's another, yeah, fallacy that you have to talk with yourself about, you realize, like, whenever you do that, you are engaging in disembodied language. And so it is your own experimentation which is prevented by that belief. And it is only your own experimentation which can result in your continuous embodied language. So unless you are determined enough, meaning like you are not giving up, you are brave enough, you don't let your head hang, you just keep on going, you just keep on experimenting, you keep on talking with yourself, you keep on saying, like, oh wait, I can do this. You keep on finding back your embodied language, and you keep on stopping your disembodied language, even though you lose it again. Even though you lose your embodied language again, you say, oh, I lost it again. Oh, okay. Yeah. You keep on experimenting. That's the key. Unless you are brave enough to repeatedly acknowledge that you have lost the connection with yourself again and that your embodied language has stopped. And then you realize also that your so-called knowledge, what you know and what you believe, you realize that all of that has to do with your disembodied language, and that you have to let go of all that knowledge. Yes. You have to let go of what you know in order to have embodied language. I cannot help it. Yeah. And so what you supposedly know about yourself and about the reality, it's all more of the same of your disembodied language. It was false. Yeah. And unless you fully understand that only the knowledge which you acquire from your embodied language, only that knowledge is valid. And you can only use this particular knowledge, this self-knowledge that you acquire from your embodied language. That is the knowledge you will be able to rely on when you need to bridge the gap between your habitual disembodied language, the way you were conditioned, and your future ability to continue with embodied language. And yes, your ability to draw on that self-knowledge which you have acquired with your embodied language will accumulatively become bigger and better and more pronounced, because you say so to yourself. And so the gap between your conditioning history with disembodied language and your ability to embodied language will be bridged by your self-knowledge. And then in 1 second, instantly, effortlessly, and knowingly, only then your embodied language will continue, because you are now beginning to become grounded in how embodied language actually works. Yeah. There's nothing magic about embodied language. Don't call it magic, because it is only due to your history with embodied language that you can continue. And you know that. at some point. You begin to know that. However, your old tendency to have disembodied language, it will still make you give explanations to your embodied language which are just simply not true. So, for instance, a person who experiences embodied language, they may immediately say, like, oh, this is a blessing from a higher power. Now I'm finally in touch with my God, or with my, my deity that I believe in, And this has to do with, I don't know, karma. This has to do with Buddha. This has to do with enlightenment, or with consciousness, or I don't know, whatever it is when you believe. People have all these beliefs. Now I'm reaching my higher self, or whatever. This has nothing to do with it. When I say language enlightenment, I simply mean ongoing embodied language. That's all it means. But when you speak about enlightenment and you talk about, I don't know, Buddha, who, I don't know, who transcends all suffering and all that kind of stuff, I don't mean that at all. I don't mean that at all. So, as long as you have embodied language, yeah, you feel fine. But the moment you have disembodied language again, you feel terrible. So, and you should be, because you now know the difference between embodied language and disembodied language. So, yeah, so you should want to stop the disembodied language so that you can have more embodied language. Yeah, that is how you end suffering to the extent that you have embodied language. Okay, so there's nothing magic about embodied language, but due to our history with embodied language, we keep having the tendency to give explanations for our embodied language which are not true. Embodied language is not about any blessing of some higher power, and nor is it because so called karma is being worked out, and it also is not happening because we believe in ourselves. No, none of these things. Embodied language can only continue if we don't have such beliefs. Yes, embodied language only continues if we realize that our language enlightenments. Oh, yeah, our embodied language continues only if we realize our language enlightenment. And yes, that means that we let go of our language completely, totally. So, because of our ongoing embodied language, we let go of language completely. And that's the end of today's news. Just imagine that the news on TV would end like this. That would be quite different, wouldn't it?